Hey guys, this is part 1 of 2 of teaching you how to do this fun little project. So it's a C with a butterfly on the side. The first part of the project is just making this fancy C. And I'm going to use the half cross stitch to do it, and I'll show you how it's done. So I've gone ahead and sketched out my next project using colored pencil, and I did this on Aida cloth. And I like to sketch out what I'm going to do and the colors I'm going to do it in, so it's very clear to me what I'm doing. Another way that some people find helpful is to sketch things out on graph paper like this, because it has squares, so it is the Aida cloth, so you can plan things out that way too. But for me, I like to have the colors, I like to have the size of everything very clear before I start. So this lesson is actually going to be broken into 2 parts. First, I'm going to do the fancy C, and I'm going to do that in the half cross stitch. And then separately, I am going to do the butterfly. And the butterfly I've chosen to do in the regular cross stitch because if you want something to look symmetrical, the regular cross stitch does a much better job of doing that than the half cross stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my C and show you what to do. So I have my embroidery floss. For the half cross stitch, I use all 6 threads of the embroidery floss. And I am going to start right here, work my way up and around and then into that next curve. You can also work this way, back and forth, but then you end up wasting a lot of string because of all the distance in between what you're embroidering. So I'm just gonna use my embroidery needle to mark off where I need to come through so I can find it on the other side. So I'm doing the half cross stitch. So I'm starting in the bottom left corner and going back in the top right corner of each square. And that's for the first row. In the second row, I'm actually going to start in the top right corner and go down to the bottom left corner. And it really doesn't matter if you don't do this perfectly. As long as the stitches look the same, that's the main thing. So this will be the first part. And then I'm going to go one below. And this will start the transition into this curve. So I'm going to go back up. Oops, and that's the hole I just came out of. So I'm actually going to start in the bottom. You have to be a little bit flexible when you're doing these letters. Sometimes you discover that the normal way you do a stitch you can't because you go back in a hole that you just came out of. So I'll start at the bottom on this row, but I'm still working vertically. So I'm just going to do the one right above it next. And then my curve is starting to go upwards. So the next one, the next square I want to do is right where my needle point is. So I am going to give myself a little mark with my embroidery needle so it's easier for me to know where to go through on the back. And I'm going to go one over and then do the next one to that as well. And because I went in this hole, I can't start in the bottom left, so I'm going to start up here. And like I said before, you have to be a little bit flexible when you're doing these types of projects, as far as where your stitch goes in and where it comes out. It's not always what you might expect. So now that I'm working vertically again, I'm doing my side-by-side stitches. And I'm just shifting over now because the C is bulging out a little bit. So I'm just going to work up a little bit and then it's going to start to move to the left. Alright, so now it's time for me to start working to the left. So I'm going to, on the next row, just scoot one square over. And it looks like I can do maybe a row or two more, just like that. And if you find that you have gaps that you don't really like if you want to go back in and fill in the letter a little bit more in spaces, you can easily do that and no one will be able to tell. So it's very hard to mess this up. So I'm going to scoot over another square. And then I'm going to scoot over 2 squares. And I'm actually going to do 3 stitches right here just to connect this curve a little bit better. Alright, so now I'm working horizontally again. So I'm going to start doing my stitches that are one on top of the other. So I'm actually going to start right here and then start working to the left. Okay, so if you find you made a mistake like I just did and I went in from the top instead of the bottom, just go through that hole and fix it. It's no big deal. So I'm going to just keep working top to bottom. I'm sure there will be times when I need to work bottom to top just to prevent going in a hole I already went into. And I'm going to work towards the left. Alright, so I finished my letter C. Just doing the same thing that I showed you guys a few minutes ago. And the last thing that I would do is just look at the letter that you've done, and if you see any sparse areas, go ahead and fill them in. So on mine, I can see a couple of areas here that I'd want to fill in a little bit better. So all I'm going to do, and I'm marking with my embroidery needle where I need to go through another side. But all I'm going to do is fill in this couple of little spaces so that my letter looks a little more complete. So I can see one other little square right here that I'd like to fill in. So again, I'm just going to mark it. Otherwise it's very hard to know which square to go into on the other side. And that will do it. That just rounds everything off a little bit better. I may continue to go through this just to see if there's anything else. But after I'm done with that, I'm going to do the butterfly, and the butterfly is going to be done in the regular cross stitch. So I'll show you how that's done too.